The apartment felt suffocating, the walls closing in as the scream echoed through the hall. Maria stood frozen in the doorway, holding her young daughter, Emma, tightly. Her ex-husband Peter stormed past her, his face a mask of anger and betrayal. The door slammed behind him, and for a moment, everything went silent. The only sound was the distant wail of sirens, adding an eerie finality to the moment. Maria's heart raced, her thoughts spinning. What has just happened? What am I going to do now? The weight of the situation settled over her like a storm cloud. Her past, which she had thought was buried, was back with a vengeance. In the aftermath of Peter's storming out, Maria was left in a whirlwind of uncertainty. She had always been the one to hold things together, the rock for Emma. But now, her strength felt like it was crumbling. She had already been through so much, juggling work, keeping the household running, and trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy for her daughter. But the betrayal by Peter, the man she had once trusted, was a blow she hadn't seen coming. How could I have been so blind, she thought. How could I have not seen this coming? She stood by the window, staring out at the world that felt so far away, realizing that the life she'd been trying to build for them both was now fractured. The sirens had faded into silence, but inside, Maria felt like everything was breaking apart. Emma, her little one, was scared. She could see it in her eyes. Maria needed to figure out how to pick up the pieces for Emma's sake. She could never let her feel the uncertainty Maria had grown up with. Maria knew she had to fight. The custody battle with Peter was looming, and every day felt like a countdown. She had no choice but to push forward. Emma's well-being depended on it. But with every passing day, the emotional toll began to eat away at her. Her job was demanding more of her, and the bills piled up. Her emotions, once stable, now felt like they were teetering on the edge. Maria found herself breaking down in the shower, tears mixing with the hot water. Am I doing enough? She thought. Am I enough? Emma was her world, and the thought of losing her was unbearable. The pressure seemed unbearable at times, but Maria refused to let go. She couldn't. For Emma. She had to keep fighting. One evening, Maria received a call from her best friend, Sarah. You're not alone in this, Sarah said firmly. We'll get through this together. You've got this. The reassurance, though simple, was like a lifeline. Maria had been so consumed by everything happening, she had forgotten that she didn't have to do it all alone. Sarah had been there through the tough times, and now, she was standing by her again. I can't promise everything will be easy, Sarah continued. But I can promise we'll fight for Emma. That night, Maria went to bed with a little more hope than she had in weeks. Sarah's words gave her a spark of strength, a reminder that the fight was worth it. The next morning, Maria woke with a renewed sense of purpose. She was still scared, still uncertain, but she wasn't going to back down. She had fought too hard, and she wasn't about to let her past define her anymore. As she looked at Emma, still asleep, she whispered softly to herself, "We're going to be okay." The days that followed were a blur of legal paperwork, meetings with lawyers, and sleepless nights. Maria was thrust into a world she had never imagined, fighting for her daughter in court. She sat across from Peter in the lawyer's office, her heart heavy with dread. Peter's cold, calculating eyes met hers, and she could feel the weight of his manipulation. "You know this isn't going to be easy, Maria," Peter said, his tone sharp. "I have more money, more resources, and I'm willing to fight dirty if it comes to that." The threat was clear, and it shook her. Maria's hands trembled as she picked up the papers, but she held her ground. "You won't take her from me, Peter. I'll fight for her with everything I have." Maria had no choice but to face her fears head on. This battle was for Emma, and she wouldn't let anyone take her away. Maria felt the weight of the battle bearing down on her more each day. Her job, once a source of stability, was now a constant source of stress. The hours were long, the workload immense, and she had little time for herself. As she sat at her desk, her mind kept drifting to the custody battle. Every phone call, every email from her lawyer felt like another reminder of what was at stake. At night, when Emma fell asleep, Maria found herself staring at the ceiling, wondering how much longer she could keep it all together. How did my life get this way? She wondered. Why do I have to fight for every single thing? But then she would look at Emma, her daughter's peaceful face, and the fire inside her would reignite. For Emma, she would keep going. Maria wasn't in this alone. Sarah had been her rock through it all. And now she found herself leaning on her friend more than ever. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, Maria broke down in Sarah's arms. "I don't know if I can do this," Maria sobbed. "Everything feels like it's falling apart. I'm so tired." Sarah held her tight, whispering reassuring words. "You don't have to do this alone, Maria. I'm here for you always." Sarah's unwavering support was the anchor Maria needed. She had people who cared about her, people who believed in her. That night, Maria promised herself that she would keep fighting, not just for Emma, but for herself too. Just as things seemed to be spiraling, a shocking revelation came to light. One of Maria's old friends, Rachel, called with unexpected news. "Maria, I know you don't want to hear this, but Peter has been hiding something. I overheard him talking to his lawyer. He's got a secret that could ruin everything." Maria's heart pounded as Rachel explained that Peter was using illegal tactics to manipulate the legal system. The news sent waves of anger through Maria, but also relief. Finally, some leverage, Maria thought. This was the break she had been waiting for. But the relief was short-lived. The truth had a price. If I use this, will I become just as bad as him? She wondered. The ethical dilemma loomed large. Maria sat alone in her apartment, wrestling with the decision she had to make. She had the power to turn the tide of the custody battle in her favor. But at what cost? She could expose Peter's deceit, but doing so meant risking everything she had built. The fear of losing Emma was still there, gnawing at her. But then she thought about Emma's future, about giving her a life where she felt safe, loved, and protected. "I will do whatever it takes," Maria decided. "I won't let him win." Maria dialed her lawyer's number with a new sense of purpose, ready to face whatever came next. Maria sat in the lawyer's office, her heart racing as she listened to the advice given. "We have enough to expose Peter's tactics, Maria. But using this information could backfire. He's powerful and the public will question your morals." The weight of the decision hung heavy in the air. She could feel the pressure building, but there was no turning back now. Every ounce of her being screamed to protect Emma, no matter the cost. "I can't lose her," Maria thought, her voice trembling as she responded. "Do it. Expose him. We're not playing fair anymore." Her lawyer nodded, his expression grim. "It's going to be a messy fight, Maria." Maria could feel the sharp edge of danger creeping in. There was no going back from this. The battle had just become much more real, and much more dangerous. The fallout from the decision hit hard and fast. Peter's legal team launched a counterattack, calling Maria's actions into question. The media got involved, painting her as a desperate woman, willing to destroy her ex-husband for custody. Maria could see the headlines, each one more vicious than the last. She spent sleepless nights worrying about the damage to her reputation, and more importantly, Emma's well-being. "Am I doing the right thing?" she thought as she watched Emma, oblivious to the storm brewing around them. Sarah was there as always, providing support. "You're doing the right thing. Don't let them make you second-guess yourself," Sarah reassured her. But Maria couldn't shake the feeling that the battle for Emma's future was coming at a much higher price than she ever anticipated. The stress began to take its toll. Maria was running on empty. Her job, the legal battle, and trying to be there for Emma were all too much. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Maria collapsed on the couch, her face buried in her hands. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Emma came running in, concern on her small face. "Mom, are you okay?" Maria pulled her close, trying to smile through the pain. "I'm okay, sweetie. I just need a little rest." But deep down she knew she wasn't okay. The weight of everything was crushing her, and she didn't know how much longer she could keep fighting. Just when Maria thought she couldn't handle the pressure anymore, a surprising source of relief appeared. Her lawyer called with news that Peter's manipulation had backfired, Evidence of his deceit was found, and it was undeniable. "We've got him, Maria," the lawyer said, his voice filled with conviction. Maria felt a wave of relief wash over her, but it was short-lived. The victory wasn't hers yet. The battle still raged on, and there were many more hurdles to face. But for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she was going to win this. With the new evidence in her hands, Maria was ready for the final push. The custody battle was about to reach its peak. The courtroom was tense, filled with family, lawyers, and even a few reporters. Maria sat in the front row, her heart pounding in her chest as she prepared to face Peter one last time. The moment of truth had arrived. As her lawyer presented the evidence of Peter's manipulation, Maria felt a sense of empowerment she hadn't felt before. For the first time, she wasn't the one being controlled. She was fighting for her daughter, and nothing could take that away from her. When the judge finally made the ruling, Maria's heart raced. "I did it," she thought, her eyes never leaving Emma's face. The victory Maria had fought so hard for now felt fragile. Just when she thought the battle was over, a new revelation shook her to the core. Her old friend Rachel, who had been offering support throughout the custody battle, came to Maria with a disturbing confession. "I never wanted to tell you this, Maria," Rachel began, her voice trembling, "but I overheard something in Peter's conversation last week. He's hiding a huge secret, something that could change everything. He's been in contact with someone you don't know about." Maria's heart sank as Rachel described Peter's dealings with an outside party, a business partner with questionable motives. "If this comes to light," Rachel warned, "it could hurt your case." Maria felt like the ground beneath her feet was crumbling. Just when she thought she had done enough, she was faced with another dangerous twist. Maria's mind raced. Peter had always been manipulative, but this was a whole new level of betrayal. She had to decide whether to expose this new information, risking her already fragile case. "What if this destroys everything I've worked for?" she thought, her stomach churning. But the reality was clear. Emma's future depended on Maria's willingness to go all in, to reveal Peter's hidden alliances and secrets. That night, after putting Emma to bed, Maria stood in front of the bathroom mirror, the weight of her decision bearing down on her. "I can't let him win," she whispered. "I won't back down." The next morning, Maria made the call to her lawyer. "We have to expose this, no matter the consequences." The decision had been made. The days following Maria's decision were filled with anxiety. Exposing Peter's secret meant opening a whole new can of worms. As the news reached the courtroom, the public's reaction was swift and unforgiving. Maria's reputation was called into question once again. The media spun the story to their advantage, painting her as a desperate woman, willing to do anything to win. As Maria sat in front of the television, watching the headlines flash across the screen, her heart sank. "Have I become the villain in my own story?" she wondered. Emma noticed her mother's distress and asked, "Mom, why are people saying those things?" Maria's heart broke at the innocence in her daughter's voice. "It's just part of the fight, sweetheart," she said, forcing a smile. "But we're going to be okay." As the pressure mounted, Maria was surprised by an unexpected ally, her estranged mother, who had been absent for years. One afternoon, Maria received a call from her mother, who offered words of comfort she hadn't expected. "I know I haven't been there for you, Maria, but I've been watching. You've become someone I'm proud of, and I want to help. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want to help Emma, and I want to be there for both of you." Maria was stunned. The years of silence between them had always been a source of pain, but now her mother was offering her a chance to heal old wounds and gain much-needed support. "Thank you," Maria whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "This means everything to me." With her mother's help, Maria felt the weight of the battle lighten just a little. With her mother's support, Maria made one last push for Emma's custody. The final court hearing was approaching, and Maria knew that this was it. This was the moment that could change everything. As she prepared her case, she couldn't help but reflect on the journey so far. Every tear, every sacrifice, every moment of doubt had led her to this point. And now, she wasn't just fighting for custody, she was fighting for her future, her dignity, and her right to be a mother. I will not let anyone take her from me, Maria thought, feeling the fire inside her reignite. The courtroom was more than just a battleground. It was her chance to reclaim her life. The courtroom felt cold, the walls pressing in as Maria sat beside her lawyer, feeling the weight of the final hearing. This was it, the culmination of months of pain, stress, and sacrifice. She could feel Peter's gaze from across the room, his smugness evident even from a distance. As the judge called the hearing to order, Maria's heart raced. Emma sat quietly in the back, her wide eyes full of confusion. Maria had promised her this would be over soon, but the reality of the battle was still so raw. As their lawyer presented the final evidence, Peter's lies, his manipulations, and the damning truths Maria had uncovered, Maria held her breath. Please, let this be enough, she thought. The tension was unbearable. The room grew silent, as the judge looked between them, her decision imminent. The judge spoke. After reviewing all the evidence, and considering the best interests of the child, I've made my decision. Maria's heart skipped a beat. The room seemed to hold its breath, and for a moment, time slowed. Custody will be awarded to Maria Williams, the judge declared, her voice firm and final. The words hit Maria like a wave crashing over her. For a brief moment she couldn't breathe, couldn't process. Emma, hearing the decision, looked up in shock, then quickly ran to her mother's arms. We did it, Maria whispered, her voice shaking. Tears filled her eyes as she hugged her daughter close. The battle wasn't over, but this was the victory they so desperately needed. After the hearing, Maria and Emma sat quietly in their apartment, the weight of the decision slowly sinking in. Maria hadn't realized how much she had been holding her breath until now. We're safe, Maria whispered to herself, looking at Emma, who was drawing quietly at the table. The relief, however, was bittersweet. The scars of the battle would take time to heal. Maria still felt the lingering pain of the past, the betrayal, and the emotional toll. But as she watched Emma, her innocent face, Maria knew one thing for sure. They would rebuild. We're going to be okay, Maria whispered to herself, her heart finally finding peace, even if only for a moment. As the weeks passed, Maria began to find her footing again. The pressure that had once consumed her seemed to ease, but the work of rebuilding her life was just beginning. With Emma by her side, Maria began to focus on creating a stable, loving environment. There were still days of doubt, of worry about the future, but the constant reminder of Emma's smile was the motivation Maria needed to keep going. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Emma asked, "Mom, are we going to be okay?" Maria looked at her daughter, her heart full of love and promise. Yes, sweetie, we're stronger now, and we'll always fight for each other. A few months later, the dust had settled. Maria's life wasn't perfect. There were still challenges, but they faced them together. The scars of the battle were still there, but they didn't define them anymore. One evening, as Maria stood at the window, looking out at the city, she reflected on everything she had been through. She had fought for Emma's future, for her own future, and now they were finally free. The weight of the past no longer haunted her. With a quiet smile, Maria whispered, "We're stronger now, and we'll never stop fighting." Despite the victory in court, Maria could still feel the weight of the past pressing on her shoulders. The relief she had felt in the moments following the judgment was now mixed with a constant undercurrent of fear. The media's portrayal of her, the courtroom drama, and the emotional toll of everything still lingered in her thoughts. Emma, though safe, was still processing the upheaval. Maria often found herself waking in the middle of the night, her mind racing. Is she okay? Is she really okay? Maria wondered. The scar from the battle was not visible, but it was there, in the quiet moments when they both lay awake. "We'll heal," Maria whispered to herself one night, her hand resting on Emma's head. "We'll heal together." As the weeks passed, Maria began to establish new routines. She knew that in order to truly heal, they had to find a sense of normalcy, a sense of security. The weight of the past didn't go away overnight, but every small step forward was a victory. She enrolled Emma in a local art class, hoping to give her a space to express herself and regain some of the joy she'd lost. Maria also took time for herself, something she hadn't done in years. She started yoga, went for walks, and even allowed herself to relax, knowing that it was okay to put herself first sometimes. "We're starting fresh," Maria thought as she watched Emma enjoy her art class. One day at a time. Even with the steps toward healing, Maria found herself overwhelmed by moments of doubt. One evening, after a busy day, she found herself alone in the kitchen, staring at a pile of bills and family documents. Will it ever feel like we're truly free? Maria wondered, her hands shaking slightly as she picked up the papers. The financial strain from the legal battle was still there, and Maria was uncertain of how long she could maintain the fragile peace they had found. The fear of slipping back into the chaos haunted her, and despite the progress, a part of her still felt like she was holding her breath. Emma entered the room, sensing her mother's unease. "Mom, are you okay?" she asked, her voice gentle. Maria forced a smile, kneeling down to Emma's height. "I'm okay, sweetie," she said softly. "We're going to be okay." But deep inside, Maria knew that they still had a long road ahead. As time went on, Maria found strength in the small victories. She landed a better job that allowed her more flexibility with her schedule, and she was able to catch up on the bills that had once felt insurmountable. Slowly but surely, things were improving. Emma's laughter, which had been quiet for so long, began to fill their home again. She had grown stronger too, no longer carrying the fear that once clouded her every expression. One afternoon, as they sat together in the park, Maria watched Emma play with the other children, her face glowing with happiness. "We're getting there," Maria thought, a smile forming on her face as she realized just how far they'd come. One evening, after a long day, Maria and Emma sat together in the living room, watching the sunset from their window. Maria turned to Emma, her voice soft but firm. "You know, no matter what happens, I'll always fight for you," Maria said. Emma looked up at her mother with a smile. "I know, Mom, I know." The words Maria had been longing to say were finally out in the open, a promise to her daughter, and to herself. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about thriving. The scars of the past would never fade completely, but they didn't define them. Together, they would face whatever came next, stronger than ever. "We've made it this far," Maria thought. "And we'll keep moving forward." It had been a few months since the courtroom battle, and Maria felt like she was finally starting to breathe again. The legal and emotional burden had lightened, and she was beginning to see the possibility of a new life for her and Emma. They had moved into a new apartment, one that was smaller, but filled with possibilities. Emma had her own room, a space she could call her own. Maria spent her evenings unpacking boxes, making the space their own. "This is our fresh start," Maria thought, a smile crossing her face as she placed the last picture frame on the wall. Every step felt like progress, and the promise of a future without constant fear or uncertainty was starting to feel real. But the road was still long, and Maria knew that rebuilding her life would take time. Yet, for the first time in a while, she felt hope stirring deep inside her. Maria began to allow herself to think about the future, something she had avoided for so long. She had spent years fighting to survive, and now, she was finally beginning to imagine what a thriving life might look like. Emma had flourished in her new environment, more confident, more secure. Maria found herself re-entering the workforce, this time with a clearer vision of her career and her goals. She took up freelance work, allowing her to balance time with Emma while still pursuing her own dreams. One day, after a long day of work, Maria and Emma sat down together for dinner, the sun setting outside their window. Maria looked at Emma, the weight of everything they had been through settling into her bones, but this time with a sense of peace. "We've come so far," Maria thought, smiling at her daughter, knowing that no matter what the future held, they were ready to face it together. One afternoon, Maria's mother called. It had been months since their last conversation, and Maria had been hesitant to reach out. But something in her mother's voice was different this time, softer, more open. "I've been thinking about you and Emma a lot," her mother said. "I want to make things right. I know I wasn't there for you before, but I'd like to try." Maria's heart swelled with emotion, a mixture of hope and fear. Rebuilding her relationship with her mother would take time, but Maria knew that this was an important step. As they talked more, Maria realized that her mother's willingness to try meant something significant, not just for her, but for Emma as well. "We'll take it one step at a time," Maria said softly, a new sense of forgiveness beginning to blossom within her. One evening, after a long week, Maria decided to treat herself and Emma to a night out. They went to the local park, where Emma ran ahead to join a group of children playing. Maria watched her daughter, her heart full. The joy in Emma's face was a reminder that they had fought for this moment, and it was worth every sacrifice. As Maria sat on the park bench, she couldn't help but smile. She had her life back. They had made it through the storm, and now they were finally free to enjoy the peace they had fought so hard for. For the first time in years, Maria allowed herself to truly enjoy the present moment, feeling the warmth of the sun and the quiet beauty of the park around them. "This is our new beginning," Maria thought, "and it's worth every bit of the fight." As Maria sat beside Emma that night, both of them tired but content after their day, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. It had been a long, painful road, but they were finally on the other side. "We made it," Maria whispered, her heart full of gratitude. "We'll keep making it, together." As the soft sounds of the evening filled the apartment, Maria placed her hand over Emma's, a silent promise passing between them. They were stronger now, more than they had ever been. The future still held uncertainties, but Maria had learned to embrace them. For the first time in years, she felt like she was in control of her life. And for the first time in a long while, she was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that they would always be okay, as long as they had each other.